I want to use the first field of medicine as an example, where my introduction is going to be longer, and then I will just put some of the questions that we had just as a case study that you can refer to when it comes to your involvement in discussing the other fields. In the book Radical Reform, I'm saying that there is one field where the scholars started the methodology that I was proposing in a way which was quite interesting, and it's mainly in medicine. And we have to ask ourselves why in medicine it was possible. For three reasons the methodology was possible. The first, because we are, when it comes to medicine, dealing with death and life. And it's quite clear that the scholars of the text cannot take a decision. It's too dangerous, too critical. We are discussing border situations where we really need to get the knowledge. So this is why they acknowledge, by definition, they acknowledge the fact that their knowledge was limited in that field, and that they needed the support of the scholars and knowing where the medical doctors were. The second is apparently because we are mainly dealing with an issue which is not connected with money per se. It's the field of health. While if you go deeper and deeper in ethics, you understand that everything, even in medical sciences, has to do with money. But, you know, it's mainly, okay, let us talk about health and let us talk. So the first, that when you are not talking about money, and the second dimension about power, the perception is, okay, we can go for it. But still, we have in our societies, Muslim majority countries, as well as here, really, when it comes to who has the authority and where does the power lie, and the money, all these dimensions are sometimes preventing the scholars or the societies to provide the communities with dynamic settings and open platforms. So the very fact that the topic itself was critical, we need answers, and the scholars need, the scholars of the text, ulama and nusus, they need the clear answer to some of the questions, clear answers to some of the questions, help these to happen. Still, it's done, and it's quite recent. In '81, in Kuwait, they started this Islamic organization of medical sciences. And they started to work in English and in Arabic, and to publish the results of their discussions. There are 9 volumes in Arabic and in English. They also have a website that everything is in the book, that you can come back to it, and you can find this information. And in fact, even though they were working together, it's still not on an equal footing. It's still medical doctors being there, giving their knowledge, and then the scholars are coming with an answer which could be the right way. In fact, it's quite clear for some medical doctors, they didn't know about the scriptural sources, so they were expecting from the scholars to come with the final Islamic position. But what was interesting is that with the presence of the medical doctors, they got, and they still are getting, the complexity of the issues when it comes to some situations. So this is something which is working, and working quite well, even though we have still to be cautious, because it's working quite well at a specific level when it comes to the direct complexity of the current knowledge that we have in medicine and the ethical answer. But the connection between medicine and economy, medicine and the relationship between northern countries and southern countries, is still, all these dimensions are not always there. You have, for example, it's very nice to be for organ transplants. For example, say, yes, that's good, Islam is for that. But when you listen to what some of the medical doctors are saying in the States, for example, at the forefront of, all the more industrialized societies and hospitals and technologies, that you have medical doctors saying they are suspending their judgment. They are not going that direction, saying that what is now at stake with organ transplant is a new relationship between poor and rich, and the pressure of the economic world on medicine is huge. So they say we are sometimes taking decision towards poor people for the sake of money and not for the sake of health. If you don't get all these connections, you are going to give a fatwa, which is, yes, you can do it, but not understanding that the consequences can be very, in fact, can be in opposition with the basic ethical stand that we have to take. I will come to this. But what I wanted to start with is, this is an area where they have been working together. They published books, and the scholars sometimes of the text were giving papers and presenting the papers, and you have medical doctors coming in a specific area saying what they had to say. One of and I will come with some of the issues here. So the methodology, it's not perfect, it's not at the highest level, but there is something which is acknowledgement that we need the scholars, we need the medical doctors if we want to get a fatwa. If we want to issue a fatwa, we need them. The second thing is, it started with the medical code of ethics. That you had it with, the Greek time is you heard about what is it called in, that, it's the, what is it, his name again? I don't know how to say it in English. Yes, Hippocrates.
The Hippocratic Oath. The Hippocratic Oath.
Say it again.
Hippocratic.
That's it. So this is the Muslim medical doctors. They were dealing with this and saying we need to have something which is an Islamic code, medical code of ethics. And they came with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim in the name, and I put it in the book, but it's in fact to come to the universal common, principles and what ethical stands, but from an Islamic viewpoint saying all this is done in the name of La ilaha illallah, it's in the name of Allah, the compassionate, the most merciful. So we start with this, and then they are entering, and you find it here, I swear by God the Great, and so on. So I think here that there is something which in the starting point is quite interesting, is to say, yes, there is an oath which is for all the medical doctors, and the Muslim medical doctors, they are entering in the same. The main reference is Allah, but the ethical attitude when it comes to the way you deal with the people, the way you deal with the patients, the way you deal with the poor and the rich should be exactly the same. So a different truth with common stand, and putting it in such a way it's quite interesting, because in no way they are denying the fact this is, as a Muslim doctor, I have my eldest brother is a medical doctor, and he's always saying, the difference between me and other medical doctors in the way I'm doing it is really the way that I'm trying my best to know how it works, but at the end, the success of the surgery is going to come from God. I start with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So you start with this, apparently it's nothing. Deeply, it's a lot. It's different, because it's the way you are trying to put yourself, to understand your code of ethics in the light of your belief. I think we should not underestimate this in medicine, but it will be exactly the same in all the other fields, is how do you start with this? So they started by thinking about this, proposing this as something which is, it's the same as to the consequences, is different as to the source. And the starting point of Islamic applied ethics could be, we might disagree on the source, but we might find commonalities as to our answers, and we'll find that in many ways we have this. Having said that now, this is where they came together and they started almost now, no, it's exactly 30 years ago, they started to work together and they started to tackle some of the very sensitive issues. And this is where you find that the Muslims in medical ethics, they are at the forefront of this contribution. Muslims have something to say on that field. And when you are, for example, as I was attending the European Committee of Ethics, you can see that what we are proposing as Muslims equipped on many fields is very up to date. We are in the discussion, we are contributing, which is not exactly the same in other fields, but here we are able to say, this is the Islamic answer to this, or some of the Islamic views on that. So the Muslims have been effective because they organize the platform where they can share and where the scholars of the text are able in closed doors to acknowledge the fact that they don't know, which is important when we deal with power, authoritative power, and it comes to issue of fatwa that I don't know, I listen to you. And then, for example, in one of the books, one of the scholars is turning to the medical doctor and say, we are waiting for you to tell us what is death from a medical viewpoint, the brain death, what it is, because the medical doctors were not in agreement on what is death and when can you say he is or she is dead. It's not a simple question because everything starts with this after the way you are going to deal with organs and transplant, the way you are going to deal with the family, the way you are going to deal with even with when it comes to life and death and when you can stop the device when you are saying no, he's dead. It's the final stage. So it's irreversible. It's not going to work. He's going to die or she's going to die, so you can stop now. So sometimes the decision should be taken by the medical doctor saying, it's not the faqih who is going to come and say, okay, stop it. No, you have to rely on him or her. And this is where, for example, all the scholars agreed that when you are dealing with a medical doctor who is a woman, you don't need two women for one man. Which is important here, is that a woman is a woman coming and why? Because she knows what she's talking about. And this is where all this business about we need two women for one man because they are more sensitive and more emotional, forget about that. It's a question of knowledge in the sphere. And all what we have now in neurosciences is, I am repeating this because I like it for our brothers to think about it, is that all the neurosciences are telling us that the men are more emotional than women and more fragile, but they talk less. Think about it. Think about it. That in fact we are more emotional, but we don't need to express it. Women are less emotional and could be emotionally stronger, but they need to talk. So they are using 3 times more words per day than men. This is the average. It doesn't mean that silence is a quality. Just to hide that we are emotional. Think about it and you will see that, when you come to the Quran, ask yourself, when you have to protect yourself, Allah is starting with men. وَكُلِّ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِم. You start with men, and then you كُلِّ الْمُؤْمِنَاتِ. So first you have to do it. But when it comes to protection, he starts with women. هُنَّ لِبَاسٌ لَكُمْ. They are protecting you, and you are protecting them. Hunna, it starts with men when it's the protective way, but when you have to protect yourself, it starts with you. So it's as if they are protecting you, so they are stronger. You have to start by protecting yourself, you are weaker. It's in the Quran. So sometimes the sciences, the contemporary sciences, are helping us to read the Quran in a new way, which might be the right way. But just to acknowledge it, okay. Why am I saying this? Now, what was the point? I was saying something before.
this is knowledge, statement of knowledge rather than...
Oh, yes, that's it. So in this, when the women are knowledgeable and they are medical doctors, they come and we need the opinion of the doctor to tell us, the physician to tell us where we are and what is the decision. And there are questions that are coming out of this. So what I took in the book, for example, something which is important in all our understanding of the religious dimension. In the book, I'm talking about contraception and abortion, which is a very important discussion for us here, but throughout the world. And very often, because of the discussions that we had with Christians, Muslims end up saying that we have the same position as all the other religions, and that's wrong. It's wrong as for contraception, what we know, and al-azl was a practice that was known by the Prophet ﷺ. He accepted it, and in one hadith he's saying, and this hadith is coming through Omar, that you need to ask your wife if you want to do the natural contraception. And the scholars understood at the beginning that it was and had to do first with the fact that if you have a sexual relationship, in fact, the objective is the procreation. And then if you are preventing your wife from getting this, you should ask her, because this is her right. Other scholars, the century, 1 century later, were saying it's not only this, is the main objective of sexuality is not procreation, it's also pleasure, so you have to ask her, because she has 2 rights, is to get a baby and to get a child, or to get pleasure. So you have to respect, and the point here for us is 3 things. Is first, the Islamic position on contraception is telling us, in fact, that the objective is not only procreation as we have in Christianity, but it has to do with pleasure, it has to do with love. And the second thing which is important is the rights of women within this discussion, that you have to respect that. Having said that, it's a position which is going to have important consequences in all the medical decisions with contraceptions and the way we have to prevent that. To prevent, attitudes that are wrong. So the consequences of that, for example, when it comes to African countries, is what was said by some, that family planning is wrong, we can't go for this, because contraception is not Islamic. This has to be rejected. There is something which, in the fact, why was it that the Prophet ﷺ accepted natural contraception, is to accept the fact that the sexual activity is not only for procreating. It has another dimension. It's a well-being. And if you are in Africa and you are facing the fact that you are not, the families, they cannot cope with the situation, you need to think about the strategy, which in fact today in many African countries, it's accepted as something. The family planning is accepted. What is not accepted is the way it is imposed by the West, by saying we need to get less children because this is the way for you to face poverty. In fact, we don't face poverty with less children. We face poverty with better distribution of wealth around the world. It's not because of, the cause is, and this is why the conference in Egypt, in Cairo, on population, the resistance of the Muslim and the southern countries was, you want to impose a policy of family plannings because in fact you want to protect your interests and you don't want to share rich wealth. And this is a very important point. This is why, a very specific ethical discussion on contraception, you need to get the political consequences. What do you mean by saying it's possible? And you have to be quite clear. We are not against family planning because of the principle, but because the way it's used to protect the Western interests and something which has to do with cultural imperialism. Quite interesting to get that, because there is also something which is, genital mutilation, for example, which is not Islamic. And we said that, we repeated this. But for example, I went to Burkina Faso, and in Burkina Faso, the Muslims were against it. This is not Islamic. But I went to Mali, and in Mali, they said, no, we are not going to accept that. It's Islamic. And in fact, when you enter the discussion, you understand that they are projecting onto a very specific ethical issue. Is it Islamic or not? Something which is the relationship with the West. This government is following the West, and it's imposed onto us. So they have another reading of the scriptural sources because of political and ideological reasons. And you are caught between this and that. So when I was in Mali, for example, the Council of Ulama told me, you don't speak about this, please. Don't speak about it because it's a controversial issue. I say, why? There is an Islamic opinion, and there are many Islamic opinions, but yes, no, but you know, if you say this here, it means that you are supporting the government. You get all these tensions here. So this is, if you don't get it, so you have to say it in a diplomatic way, but you have to say it. You have to say it. You have to say that genital mutilation is not. And it's not because the French government is imposing this onto the Malian government that you are accepting the suffering of women. That's not acceptable either. So I would say that this is where you understand these challenges, but that level of complexity is not in these circles that we have in Kuwait. We just stop at, is it Islamic or not, depending on the knowledge coming from the physicians and the knowledge of the ulama and nusus. This is why we need to complexify, because the challenges are many. And in also a very important discussion about abortion. The first attitude of Muslims, which is the right one, the general position is no to abortion. But be careful. It's no to abortion as something, by the way, if you listen even to the people who were or still are advocating abortion as something which is a right, they are not saying, oh, abortion is good, we are happy to go. No, it's, if we are facing it, we need to have the choice. We need to decide what is happening with us. Sometimes they are exaggerating and they are using abortion as a way of a contraceptive. That's wrong for us. But when it comes to abortion, we have to be very clear. The first position that is accepted by all the scholars, if the life of the mother is in danger, you can go for it. Okay, this is. But now, you look at the general position of Islam, and then you come to all the specific situations, and you'll find that all the fatwa are opening doors. In fact, abortion is no abortion in general, and then you take case per case to know what you are going to do. So for example, the discussion that we had in Bosnia, after the war in Bosnia, where you have scholars coming from Saudi Arabia saying no abortion, because this baby is not yours. Yes, you have been raped, but it's not your baby, so you have to keep it. Some other scholars were saying no. This was not an act of freedom. You were imposed, you can go for abortion. So you had two positions, but you understand the differences, that what could happen. So some were saying if you have the pills just the day after pills and you are going straight to this, you can go for that. Some others were saying no, even if it's 2-3 weeks later and this is the only way for you to go for abortion, go for abortion. And some other scholars saying no, not at all. You have to keep the baby. So I think here that this is where you have the discussions, and the scholars here are saying, look, there is the formal decision, but there is the psychological, post-war psychological trauma. Can you deal with this? Because at the end of the day, one of the rights of the children is education and well-being. What if in the post-war trauma you are sticking to the rule and not understanding that you will have something which is unbalanced, you know, kids and mothers even, because they are suffering, they are not acknowledging that this is their child, for example. These are very complex questions, and this has to do with abortion. But the point is that in Islam, the fact that we have al-hukm wal-fatwa, and it's a case per case, this is why it's very dynamic. If we get the scholars coming with you know, the medical doctors, the physicians telling you on the ground, this is what I'm facing, so I need a decision now. I need to take a decision. What can I do? And the scholars getting a very, a more complex or complexified perception of the reality. Is not yes and no in your office. It's really, we are dealing with suffering. We are dealing with things that are this you know, post-traumatic impact after the war could destroy a society if you just don't face the problem. And we were dealing with, you know, we don't know the exact figures, but between 20,000 rapes to 60,000. It's a society. It's a whole society can be affected by this. So we have to deal with it and to ask ourselves in which way. And the scholars came with interesting positions and different positions, a diversity of positions on that, from complete rejection to opening up doors. And once again, it's not new. Even Abu Hamid al-Ghazali was dealing with it and was dealing with things that were, you know, on the hadith that you can intervene before 120 days because it's 3 months, opening up this position, which is now a minority position among the scholars. It's too long, but some of them are accepting the fact that you can intervene, they can go for it before the time, very soon after the accident, or depending on the specific situation. This is where, when you talk like this, when I wrote the book, Can We Live with Islam, to a Christian professor, he said, I didn't know that it was so dynamic, it was so open, that we have this field to discuss. And this is where we have to come with this discussion. And what happened in this field with these scholars is a very, very updated positioning and saying, these are the different positions, and you can just go for a solution or an answer that is suitable for you. I just wanted to say, so these are the questions where, what are the sensitive medical questions that we may have today? These are two of the most important. We are still facing genital mutilations, that this is also something that we are facing. Things that are important, and I mentioned 3 of them in the book, is all this discussion that I talked about it yesterday on organ transplantation. Where in Islam, except of the organ of reproduction, everything is possible. You know that in Islam, the majority position is it's possible, and they came from this position, this understanding that, you know, min usul al-fiqh, life has primacy over death, so you can take from the dead body and you can save all this. It's okay, from a Muslim to a non-Muslim, from a non-Muslim to a Muslim. Not a problem with this. So this is possible. Now the problem is that it's easy to get to that level. The problem that we are facing, as I told you, is the complexity, the complex relationship between medical sciences and economic power, the transnational. Nothing is said, for example, coming from Muslims about the generic medicines, that this is today a way to resist exploitation from the north towards the south. And very often we don't take a stand on that. While it's necessary, it's ethical, say, why this transnational corporation are making so much money with medicines, while we can get them cheaper and help the people. And this was the case with AIDS in South Africa, for example. The complaint coming from South Africa is that you have the means to help us, but you want the money to kill us. So this is where the ethical positioning from Muslims should not only be on technicalities, it's also a philosophy of dealing with medical sciences. And this is where we are starting, and we have done a lot, but still there are very sensitive issues like this one where we need answers, where we need fatwa, or at least an ethical stand. Be careful with what we are saying here. I'm not saying that we need a fatwa for everything. An ethical stand is not always a fatwa. Okay? An ethical stand is, this is what it should be. Now, sometimes we need a fatwa, which is a legal opinion, but it's not always. An ethical stand is this, we are talking here about justice, this is the way it should be reformed, which is not always, should not be translated into a fatwa. What I'm talking about here is what is happening, for example, with organ transplant in some of our hospitals. In the north, but also in Muslim majority countries and in the south, where today we know it takes money just to, for example, keep someone alive when he is naturally in the terminal, final stage, and we keep him or her alive to be able, or sometimes it's because we don't have the final response. Is it irreversible or not? We need the physician to come and to tell us this is over. He's not going to come back. So this is where you have to take a decision. Now we know, it happened in Switzerland, my country, where we know that the economic pressure, it's so expensive that some decisions are taken for the sake of money, to save money. And sometimes because someone is waiting and need the organs, so we are under pressure. So the decision was taken, for example, in Switzerland, and it was a vote that the physician who is going to tell the family your relative is dead should not be the same as to the one who is going to say to the other, we find or not an organ, because there is conflict of interest. Muslims are completely lost in this discussion. We are not there. Because it's another level. It's where economy and medicine are coming together. And medicine today, it's making money. And it's making money, it means you have to deal with transnational corporation and you have to take a stand. All the Muslim majority countries, they don't have any restriction to deal with transnational corporation. They are ready for it, they do it, they are ready even to pay. The transnational corporation dealing with medicine and producing them, one of the biggest markets that they have is in the Arab, the petromonarchies. They're ready to pay. So there is no philosophy here. So we are working, in fact, in something which is completely disconnected world. There is a disconnect here between what is done and what should be our, and this is what you were saying, it's important. We need here sometimes to take a political stand, which is not only an ethical stand, because an ethical stand without power to express it and to resist some of the economic order that is in fact unethical, it's not going to lead us anywhere. We can't do that. But so I'm just saying what are the first steps, and at the same time the contradictions and what is not done. So in the organ transplantation, this is something which is important. Another thing which is here quite interesting is euthanasia, where the Muslims are really, really at the forefront of the discussions here. I saw things that were very interesting, even with the passive and active euthanasia. You know that there are different types. I was talking with one of our brothers, a Salafi alim in London. He was saying euthanasia is wrong from say I'm sorry. And this is the problem that we have sometimes, is that he is focusing on the text and he's not even reading what is produced by Muslim scholars on that. And he didn't even know that there are different types of euthanasia, active and passive. And the passive, it's accepted from an Islamic viewpoint when you stop giving the medicine, that it's the final stage, the medical doctor is, and the physician is telling you, that's over, it's the final stage, he's not going to come back. So you can stop. And this is referred and studied by scholars. So we are here in a situation when we can say, yes, Muslims and the fuqaha are, with the help of the physicians, coming with interesting answers. And once again, always the same, is when we are talking about euthanasia is also some of the limits that we are reaching when it comes to other dimensions with economy that are not touched, but on that field it's good. Last point that, am I still in my time? Yes? The last point that I was talking about it yesterday is sometimes where we are not responding. One of the main challenges of our time over the last decade was, of course, AIDS. And the moral qualification of AIDS as being the illness of the homosexuals and the bad behavior made it very difficult for the Muslims to come, and even for the medical doctors to come with an answer on that. It was just, we are rejecting in many Muslim majority societies or in the communities, if you are getting it or you are infected, you don't speak, you just disappear. And sometimes some of our brothers and sisters passed away and it was not known. There was a, hypocrisy. It should not be done. It's wrong. It could be out of, yes, a wrong sexual behavior, or it could be because of blood transfusion, or whatever. The point is that there is something which is very important that the physicians should teach the Muslim scholars. And this is coming from the medical code of ethics. Whatever is your religion, whatever is your status, whatever is the cause or the reason of your sickness, I don't care. You are a human being. I'm going to try to cure and to help you. There is no moral qualification on a specific sickness. There is no. Poor, rich, black, white, Muslims, non-Muslims, I'm not here to ask you about the reasons. I'm trying to solve the problem. And sometimes the scholars are not getting that. They are projecting and they are scared of the community. So the medical doctors, sometimes when they are Muslims, are also, it's very difficult for them to face the community. And in some of the situation, it's very difficult that you have to take a decision that is not understood by the community. For example, we were dealing with drugs in Mauritius. And there is a program there that we are dealing with drugs and they are going to be infected, and in order to avoid AIDS, you are going to give them what they need, but something which is clean. You know, how do you call this? The syringes? The syringes should be clean, and in order to avoid infection. So they were trying to go to the mosques to say this, that we need your help. You need the help of the scholars to help us, because drugs and addiction and infection, AIDS is there. We are dealing with that. And the great majority of the mosques are saying, no, you can't come to tell us that we have to give them clean syringes. That's right? Now tell me the right pronunciation. Syringes. In order to prevent them from being, we can't do this. It's to promote haram, to prevent something which the so-called helping no, we can't do that. And this is where, once again, if you don't get the whole picture, if you're not facing the complexity, you come with just an ethical stand, is haram, haram, and we don't talk about it. So in the name of this blindness, in fact, it's a very dangerous situation. It's like, you heard about Mother Teresa in Calcutta. You know, she is coming there, and I went there and I saw what she was doing. It's great. It's just impressive. Impressive what she was doing to help the poor. But at the same time, she's saying no contraception. So in fact, she's curing, and in the name of her faith, Catholic, she's imposing onto people who are not sharing her faith attitude that are not helping these people to solve their problems. So by doing this, it's counterproductive in itself. So it's great, but the moral positioning of her in Calcutta is problematic. You're not going to hear this in the West, because in the West she was great. But when you go there and you ask, what is the point? What are you doing? Why are you imposing this position on people who need to find a solution? Because without anything which has to do with contraception, they are having more and more children. There is no vision for the future. So you are promoting something which is destroying the society there. And as Muslims, we don't have a problem with that. We don't have a problem helping the people to be much more reasonable in the way they deal with their family. She had a problem coming from the Catholic tradition in a situation, in a society where the great majority of the people are Muslims. but they are protecting them on one side and exposing them on the other. So here is a discussion which is a bit balancing this idealization of some of the activities that some people could have in the third world. So what I wanted to say here is that in this, as in that field of medical sciences, what is interesting is the first steps are already here. That we are doing the job, and the scholars of the text are listening to the physicians, and they're understanding that it's very complex. So we have very effective new positioning on cloning, on euthanasia, on contraception, on abortion. It's interesting, it's important. Now, what is missing is the step, which is after this one, with this connection with other dimensions, the economic imposition, the transnational corporation, something which is missing in our discussion. We want something which is very Islamic as to punishment, but not so much Islamic as to finance and economy. So we don't touch this. So the order is not touched, and we are dealing with it in a way which is, even through what was done by the Kuwaiti organization, it's something which is missing in the whole field. So what I wanted you to understand with all this discussion, I will open up the discussion right now, is, okay, in that field, what were the needs? It's just this methodology was needed for many reasons. And now, what are the main questions that we are facing in medicine today? And by the way, I haven't talked here in that field also to all the dimensions that are connected in a way with this, which has to do with mental ill and all the dimension of psychology, psychiatry, which we have some of our brothers and sisters working on that field, but it's a missing dimension here. It's too sensitive to be touched today because we feel that we are touching something which it's between, too sensitive to be Islamically tackled, or a world where the junoon and the jinns are very often referred to. We are dealing with superstition here, much more with effective scientific take on this dimension. So just to raise the right questions in the field and to try to get which kind of answers are coming. So this is what I want you to do in arts and entertainment and culture, with economy later, and then with gender. What are the main questions and how are you going to put these questions? What are the priority questions? And which kind of answers you think we have or we don't have coming from the scholars today? This is the way I wanted so this is what I try to show you. We have some answers, and that's good. And there are other answers that we don't have because still it's too complex, it's too challenging. I want you to do the same, but now with your questions, not with the questions that you can find in the book. I chose some of the questions, but I want you to be much more involved in the discussion in the next sessions this afternoon. I think that it's there, but it's not the only attitude that we have among the scholars. Some of our scholars of the text are really bright, and we need to, the point is really to find them and to choose who are men and women, the people who are bright in their field. And we have very bright scholars. On the other side, we have others that are avoiding this position, which is get lots of expertise in their field, but very childish when it comes to the Islamic reference. They want, just very easy answers, and they are not expecting Islam to be complicated and complex. But you have other attitudes, and I think that this is where you have some scholars who have, I would say, any scholar, any scientist, any sociologist and political experts who has an ethical concern would not have this attitude towards the scholars of the text. The ethical concern is, you have something to tell me. You have something to provide me with, and I think that this is the people that we need to, we are not going to change the mindsets of the people, and that through in some families, the less equipped intellectually is going to learn, religion and others are going to be medical doctors, and okay. But I would say that we need to look at our communities in another way, and to find the people who don't have this and they can work together. And out of a discourse that is sent to the community to show how much this is different. This is not the case. This is why you, if you have studied, it's important to come back to the community and to show how much it's important to be equipped with the two knowledges, and to show how much it's important that ethics is not, you know, a secondary discipline. Ethics is the first discipline of our time, because if without ethics we are going to destroy the world. Without ethics, the West is going to destroy the world. This is why we are talking about global warming. This is why we are talking about, you know, the economic crisis. It's economy without ethics. It's politics without ethics. And this is exactly where we can contribute. So it's a discourse based on confidence that ethics is the first field and science of our time, because it's necessary if we want to save ourselves and save the planet. I would change the discourse, change the substance, and find the people within our communities or our societies that can help to work together, not having this mindset. And you have a lot. You have a lot of people. I think that we should not be misled by the common, you know, at the grassroots level, the common understanding that, you know, at the end of the day, the best is to be a medical doctor or to work in science, and religious sciences are not so important. It's not always the case. I think it's not always. You know, you also have religious ulama and nusus, the way they look at the people, it's sometimes very, you know, patronizing. You say, you're just a teacher. The Islamic science is something. Except when they are sick. And they know how much it's important. I saw people, the way they were talking about, you know, the other sciences, and when they have something, it's completely different. You understand the very essence of what it is at the end. So we have to build a new narrative on that. We have a problem with our categorization of sciences. We have a problem within the Muslim community. We keep on saying it's comprehensive, but that's not true. In our understanding, in our practices, it's not. We are still differentiating between Islamic sciences and other sciences, and we are still creating an implicit hierarchy between the sciences. You know, even when people are saying, oh no, I don't speak about Islamic sciences, I got your point, but I'm speaking about sacred sciences. It's even worse. What is the opposite of sacred sciences? I'm sorry, if a medical doctor, a physician is starting by saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and he is saving a life, it's very sacred. It's sacred. If someone who is just getting all this knowledge to save animals, is sacred. He's praying when he's doing that. It's a prayer. It's a sadaqah. And we have to come with this understanding that we have to reassess our understanding. And if you look, for example, in the sequences, many people, they are not following, but I wrote the first book to be a European Muslim. It was in the beginning, and I came with the traditional chart of what are the Islamic sciences, you know, Al-Quran, was Sunnah, and all that. In the second book, Western Muslims and the Future of Islam, I changed this by saying we should change even our understanding, our chart of things. It's a circle is the text and the two texts and the way we deal with sciences, understanding that the object of your science is giving you the methodology. And when you respect the methodology, this is where you are Islamic. You are Muslim when you respect the methodology that is given to you by the object that you are studying. So faithfulness to the rules that are given by God in the text, which is revealed, or in the text, which is the world, the universe, this is why we are very Islamic. Faithful to the rules is Islam. So when you are trying to get the very essence of the Arabic semantic and morphology and grammar, you are dealing with Islam because you are trying to be faithful to the substance. But when you are dealing with the world and you are respecting nature, you are respecting animals, this respect of what Allah is giving you, this is where you are Muslims. An Islamic science is the respect of God's objectives in your knowledge. This is it. So everything is Islamic. in that sense. But you don't have to put every time Islam just to be confident. The way we are using words because we are lacking confidence. I don't know if you get my point, but it's a long answer.